For the last year or so, my forehand has been pretty bad, with a lot of shots just being turfed into the ground. I didn't really realize 100% why until I started working on it and figured something out that I think is pretty important that might help you. So today I want to go over the cue as well as the feel that cue is trying to get at, because maybe the cue doesn't work, but you can understand something based on what I'm trying to feel, so that now I'm not turfing my forehands. There's still a long way to go, and so I will actually tack on at the end of talking about the cue and what this could help, a little bit of form work for myself. A couple sets just throwing everything that's in here, some straight stuff, some flippy stuff, and trying to work on a really smooth release because of something that Eagle told me when we filmed together, which is this. Is there anything that you like worked on so that when stuff comes out of your hand, like on your forehand, it's like seamless?
Throw flippy stuff.
I think it's in your wrist. Oh, it's flippy stuff.
Definitely flippy stuff, because it won't let you get away with it. Ideally, it's like you're throwing the least torque resistant stuff possible. So from the MVP lineup, like the uplink or the paradox, you know, if you could forehand a glitch, that's gonna really help your release as well. So any disc that you don't think is a good forehand disc, that's what you should probably forehand to make your forehand better.
Do you all think about power or just release, and then you just trust that the power will come when you need to throw the faster stuff?
The latter for sure. It's you wanna dial it in first.
Now that's all said and done, let's get into the cue. So honestly, it's pretty simple. When I am throwing my forehands into the ground, the reason that's happening for me likely is I'm overpowering it a little bit, but also my swing is kind of from high to low. It's like the trajectory is towards the ground. Part of that's gonna be in your hips, but the cue that I found that helps me right now is honestly something I'd heard talked about before, just not in the same way that I thought of it. So this might not be anything new for you, but you might hear it in a different way and it be finally helpful. But to stop turfing them, all I would do is just kind of bring this arm up early. If you watch Chandler Kramer, who is known as having one of the best forehands on tour, throw forehands, when he's warming those up, it sometimes looks like he's just throwing a lefty backhand, which is an interesting cue. But when you're throwing a backhand, you want to keep your elbow up. You want to keep everything kind of high. You don't want to be dipping down and throwing it into the ground or causing you to throw nose up and air bouncing, which is why a lot of my forehands now, even if I am throwing them in the right airspace, they're still nose up because my body's used to that little arm swing, and I'll flick them nose up. So keeping your shoulder up the whole time as you come back, and then you come through, and of course you can clear the shoulder. I've heard this like the windshield wiper maybe, or just clearing the shoulder I've heard about. But for me, it was less about doing that as I finished the throw, as I came through, and more about how I kind of loaded my forehand, because if I'm throwing this way, the way that I used to throw would be like this. Just kind of trying to get everything back, get the disc back, get the disc up, and kind of, even if I'm here, it doesn't quite matter as much because this shoulder is kind of driving this shoulder up. It's hiking this one back. This shoulder being in this position makes this shoulder kind of stay up and back in a weird place. So when you swing through and you just swing around, it stays high, and you either throw it into the ground or you throw it really nose up, or you just like leak a lot of power and your arm is doing all the work, which is not a healthy throw for your back shoulder. So now, instead of kind of coiling up like this and throwing it basically just down into the ground, if you keep this shoulder up, now this shoulder stays level. It's not down, it's not up, but it can be those things, and you can dictate your throw now more with your hips. If I want to throw a hyzer, I keep the shoulder up, and with my hips, hinge over a little more so I can throw a hyzer. If I want to throw it flat, keep everything a little more level. And same thing with Anheuser, keep this up. It's more that it creates space for my hips to be able to move and for my arm to be able to swing, rather than pinching off my shot, where if I keep this down, this feels pinched, like you can feel it. In a way it feels coiled, but not well. Because the feel that I'm going for here is not that this feels crunched at all, but that this feels open so that I can crunch this way. I want the coil to feel like my abdominal sling, your like obliques, your oblique sling maybe. It feels like it can coil this way rather than crunching in here. Because what's this gonna do? I mean, it's not helping rotation, but this type of coil over the top is gonna help you. It's like winding up a spring. If you're trying to coil and uncoil, you wouldn't wind up a spring by crunching the front side of the coil. You would coil the spring by twisting it Okay, we need to talk about that real fast because what I just said, I think conceptually is pretty correct, but the way that I showed it is really bad. Don't mind my office, it's a lot of a mess right now, but you might have seen when I was talking about that forehand and coiling, I was going like this. And this is not coiling well. I do feel a little bit in my core, but I'm not really coiling against anything, and so it probably looked awkward to you. You've seen people talking about form before because since I've been very pinched off, I'm very front side dominant. The way that I throw right now, it's something that needs to be worked on in my forehand and backhand. I'm only talking about the upper body here, which is why I think this is still super useful, and it gives me room to work on this in my lower body because your upper body and lower body work in conjunction with one another, and one being bad can force the other one to be bad and maybe not even let you make improvements. And so for me, one of the first things I do when I would get to the forehand would just be kind of to try to get this way, kind of pinching everything off in this upward motion, and my upper body being this way, so my lower body having to compensate and balance by more of my weight being on my front foot, because everything needs to be in balance. So now, if I'm more balanced here, then I can actually coil against this back leg. So not this type of coil I was talking about, but instead this type of coil where my back leg stays strong, and I'm actually coiled against it to throw hyzers, to throw flat shots, to throw anhyzers, and actually from there have a spring to uncoil rather than kind of having a spring in the upper body, but I'm still forcing a lot of this rotation. Here, I'm actually coiled and there's stuff to unload. So this is something that is being worked on that I'm not touching on even later in this video because it's still more about clean releases, but it maybe is the more foundational thing that I should work on. But this cue is really the only hey, I know this works for me, maybe it works for you, everything else is kind of speculative, and good luck. Back to what I was saying, because there's some more good stuff. This might not be what's your ailment on your forehand, but if you're throwing them into the ground, this is definitely one thing to work on, is just keeping the shoulder up. And again, this isn't gonna fix all the problems, which is why I have more I need to work on. But what this will do is allow you to fix all the problems if this is an issue that you're having. Because if I'm here and I coil and then I'm like, okay, why does my shoulder, the front side of my shoulder, feel stressed every time I throw? It's not in a neutral position. It's being popped forward and up so that the disc can come out straight, because your body's still gonna compensate and find a way to make it throw there. But if you're forcing it to compensate in a bad way, it can be more painful. And so ever since changing this, I've not necessarily felt like I have more power, just more control. And I was able to birdie like a 380-foot uphill hole in a recent tournament, just focusing on this one cue and then allowing my body to do the rest. So that's really the feel that I'm going for, is feeling like there's just space underneath my armpit here, and just like the ability for my body to do whatever. It feels much looser, honestly, bringing this up than it staying down here, because everything is close to my body here, and so you think, oh, that's good for tight rotation. But if pushing this back pushes this up and doesn't let you have a free arm swing, it's never gonna be good. So instead, keep it up, and this helps you stay up more in your throw so that you can use your hips to dictate more hyzer, flat, and hyzer. And now, I can actually work on my forehand. And from this, I have another cue that I want to work on. And personally, I need to focus a lot on cues right now because I've been working with a strength and conditioning coach where we're very biomechanically focused, and I'm very nerdy about anatomy and those things. And so I can get thought up in like, my external oblique needs to be contracting here, my internal needs to be contracting so that this is pushing this way and this is pulling this way, and I'm coiled up, and my arm needs to do all these things, my rotator cuff and whatever. And I need to get all that out of my head when I'm actually throwing, because my mind muscle connection, maybe yours is great, mine is not like that. It works in like cues and feels, and I try to get it to work in anatomy, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. So the cue today that I'm going to be working on is just about what Eagle said to me, which is just throwing more understable stuff and just getting the release to be clean. All comes down to throwing flippier plastic. I also personally have a hard time throwing really overstable stuff smoothly, because I always try to overpower it. And when I try to overpower things, I'll get way out in front of them and like throw with my arm, kind of like, if you ever see your shoulder coming forward like this and dumping, it's not gonna be healthy. It's not about jutting the shoulder forward and letting everything follow. It's about being smooth. And so in order to help myself not get overly big, my thought is a cue could be to have a short but deliberate follow through. So if I'm trying to throw a hyzer, I'm not trying to just swoop out the biggest hyzer ever, because even in that, I drop my shoulder in order to get that more hyzer. I want to have a very small and deliberate follow through right now, not because of a small fall through is good or bad, but because for me, where my form is at right now and my problems, it could work, which is why cueing is so specific, and these videos are not going to be for everybody who watches them, but hopefully they give you good ideas. And that's why, as I'm talking about cues now, I'm going to try to talk about the feel as well and the problem that it's trying to fix, because cues are not inherently good or bad. They're just useful for some situations. So I'm not trying to take any big steps. All I'm focused on is a small, deliberate follow through. Honestly, keeping that small helps me keep it kind of in my shoulder, not dropping my shoulder down, which is what I tend to do, or pushing my shoulder forward. And so, wow, this is going way better than I expected. And that's kind of annoying, because that means it was kind of under my nose all along, and I just haven't done it. But I'm gonna throw all these, and I'm not focusing at all on big power. I think the power will come eventually, but not from trying to force it, but from my body getting used to the movement pattern and feeling like it can use more of my muscles and my explosiveness that I've already built, or that I will be building because I'm practicing still this throwing motion. But forcing my body to try to throw faster is not the goal for me right now. I did also bring out these gravity bombs, PD2s, because especially when it gets faster, I really feel like I just need to jam on it. And you see my shoulder doing all these weird things because I'm talking about that, instead of, if I'm throwing a fast forehand, it should probably just look like everything is staying in tight and is smooth and is more, oh, they coil back into it. Let me keep this up, coil back into it, and throw it down, rather than what my body wants to do. And I say throw a fast disc over stable disc on a forehand, I want to do this. So I'm going to try to throw these. I don't care how far they go. If they go 200 feet, awesome. I just trying to throw them smoothly. I think my arm got a little in front of that. It's not smooth. A little more nose down. Still doesn't need to be fast. Wasn't as small of a fall through, but I like where that's going. It is important when adding the second cue, especially like this is something I've been working on for a week and not even in that many sessions. Always reminding myself of the main first cue that I'm trying to build off of. Because for a couple of shows I forgot about my arm cue, and that's, if my shoulders are dropping, I'm not going to be able to have the correct follow through anyways. So now I'm reminding myself, like, preset the arm, really focus on that first, and if I can get to the second thing, great, but I might also need a couple more sessions to really ingrain this in my body, to keeping the arm up. First cue that this video is about. That's nice. Oh yeah. And a putter too. That was nice. That was a PA3. Heck yeah. So, I still have a really long way to go. I'll probably spend some time out here and work on my form a little bit more, but I hope this video helped you a little bit. The big thing, not surfing my forehands, get the arm up. It's not going to not cause you to throw nose up, but you probably won't turf as many forehands anymore. And if you do, then there likely is a different issue going on. But for me, I have not felt like I'm throwing a forehand into the ground because I'm trying to overcompensate with my upper body than my legs. Everything's able to stay smoother. And I haven't felt like I've lost any power. If anything, I have more consistent power in my forehand, but a long road ahead of me to having a really solid pro level forehand. And as I have more things that I realize work for me on forehand and backhand, I'll share them with you. Subscribe if you want. I won't be just giving the, hey, this is my thoughts on stuff that's working. That's why the second half of this video was more of that. I'm like, hey, maybe this cue will work. Maybe it's not gonna work. So I wanted to kind of workshop it a little bit, and it seems to be doing all right. Not great on my anhysers, so I may have to figure out if that's a lower body or an upper body thing. Keeping that arm up is a cue that biomechanically to me makes a lot of sense, and then practically when I actually do it also makes a lot of sense. So that's the main thing from this video, the main takeaway. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.